Silo is back, and it's something else entirely, with the first episode of Season 3 opening on a story that takes us 3 months since the events of the last time we saw Juliet. We open with a lot already at play, and once again the series takes an interesting approach, jumping back and forth between two timelines as we witness the before times, which will be an integral part of the storyline this time around. But before we get an idea of things, we're jolted by the fact that Juliet is the mayor now, and Bernard is the worst thing that has ever happened to the Silo, or what the mysterious Camille is trying to sell to the Silo people. Let's jump right in and explore the ending of the episode, and also glance over some major details that popped up in the episode titled, Who Are You? A title related to the common question asked by people when they have memory issues. Or at least that's what happens in the episode.
Juliet, whatever you're going to do it now.
Ending explained. The Upside Down Bowl. The episode primarily focused on the idea of memory, with both the past and the present playing with a concept, and on how manipulation is happening. There's definitely some memory manipulation happening in the present. During her last interaction with Camille at the cafeteria, I was talking about Juliet of course, we could see that she was actively trying to work through what had happened to her. She tried to go through the events of her getting back into the silo, and right then Camille made her watch a fake video that shows that Juliet had gone into a refuge hut once she had made it outside. Camille once again used Bernard as the scapegoat, which is probably what all the people in authority are doing for the benefit of the bigger lie. But you could hear it in Juliet's voice when she said the words, "Thank the founders," that she isn't entirely convinced by the story, just like the Juliet that Shirley and we knew would never trust. Later in Camille's interaction with the algorithm, it becomes clear that they're manipulating Juliet and are also aware of her active attempt to regain her memory, so much so that the algorithm proposes that they double the dose of her drugs in order to further suppress her memory. But how long can they do that? Right when we see the nurse hand Juliet her so-called vitamins, clearly the memory drugs in disguise, we see Tony arrive with the chowder. Juliet has a taste of it, and then decides to throw it away, only to find a capsule inside the chowder. For a second there, I actually thought that this was the memory suppression drug and not the vitamins, and I almost felt that these people were really poor at designing their drugs. Anyway, turns out the capsule had a message for Juliet. It said, "Want the truth? Leave your bowl upside down. Go to the marketplace. Burn this." Throughout the episode, there are only a few moments when we get a glimpse of the Juliet we knew, the one who would rebel at the slightest provocation and work through all her doubts. And right at this time, we get another one of these moments, where Tony asks her why she put her bowl upside down, and she doesn't give it a second thought and replies, just to let them know how much she hated the chowder. So you know that there's the Juliet already there inside her, trying really hard to get out of all the memory suppression drugs that they were loading her with. But now, who's trying to communicate with Mayor Juliet? The last time we saw someone reach out to Juliet in this manner, it was Martha. Martha had managed to get her message through to her while Juliet was in the holding cell back in Season 1. And we know that Martha is involved with everyone in the Down Deep, trying to wake everyone up, be it Juliet or the people who are convinced by the lies and fabricated stuff that Camille and Robert are working on. The first step toward Juliet knowing the truth would be for her to stop taking the vitamins, and we know that Maria would be the ideal person to help her out with that. She'll be the ideal person not to jump in with the details, but to put her through a course to come to the truth herself. Charlotte's story. By the way, it's really interesting how they're pulling off the two different timelines, and we don't even know what's happening at Silo 17. It would be interesting to see how those jumps work out. Anyway, in the first flashback, we get to the before times and are introduced to Jessica Brown Findlay as Charlotte Keene, who suspiciously watches a man on the subway. Later, she meets up with her brother Daniel Keene, the man we saw at the cliffhanger ending of Season 2, and they even talk about the events of Daniel's interaction with the journalist Helen Drew. Now, the rest of the episode, dealing with the before times arc, does segue into Daniel's story, but the main driving force remains with Charlotte. Charlotte asks Daniel to join Thurman's Iran Committee, which has something to do with retaliation against Iran for a dirty bomb that they delivered to the United States. But some interesting details do pop up during Daniel's interaction with Thurman as he attempts to get into her committee. Firstly, the fact that he had played a key role in saving New Orleans, had gone into replacing levees with tunnels, and had invented a drill that became a crucial part of whatever's going on. This is quite important considering everyone seems to be talking about it, as earlier even Charlotte mentioned it, and this might become a key detail in his involvement with the Silo project. Anyway, one of the primary reasons Daniel put forward to Thurman for her to get on her committee was that Charlotte was involved in one of the missions. Later on, Senator Thurman's daughter Anna goes to Daniel and informs him that his sister is involved in a mission taking place that very same night. Then we see Charlotte and her team in their F-35s going on a bombing run, as the USS McCain fires some missiles in Iran's direction. Their plan was to double tap the targets and make sure the missiles did their part, but that's when things take a whole new turn. They end up flying into a storm cloud at 50,000 feet, something that does feel out of place, and it ends up messing with the F-35s. Some weird gooey nanoparticle thingy starts leaking into Charlotte's plane along with the others, and they all start crashing. Yeah, that was a major development. The gooey nanoparticle thingy, that's something completely new, and something that has not been mentioned or used in the series before. Anyway, Charlotte does manage to survive the crash, as she's rescued out through Turkmenistan and brought back to the United States, where Daniel goes to see her. Turns out she's had a traumatic brain injury, and Anna once again guides Daniel about where Charlotte is being kept. But upon meeting her, it turns out that Charlotte has no memories of who Daniel is. That's a pretty cool parallel to play with in an episode that focuses heavily on Juliet's future memory. But wait, is it just a case of TBI with Charlotte, or is she being made to forget things so that something could be kept a secret? Or could it be just the plane crash? Does it have something to do with Charlotte wanting Daniel to leak the committee details to Helen? We'll probably find out later. Other major updates. The episode covered the series events 3 months after we saw Juliet. We came across Bernard, and even though a lot of things have been kept secret, some interesting developments meant we found out some answers through side references. It's quite clear that Robert and Camille have the most control in the silo, though it's not entirely clear how much Robert knows about the algorithm. Both of them are equally involved in labeling Bernard as the enemy of the silo, a point mentioned several times during the council meeting. One of the things he mentions as a word against Bernard is that he had installed multiple cameras across the silos, which didn't get the response a creepy move like that should have, but Robert adds that they've gotten a hold of most of these cameras. He also adds that some are still kept for important reasons, and one of them is clearly the one kept at the vent in Juliet's room. I mean, I'm pretty sure that they haven't removed any of the cameras, probably only the ones they had to use as an example of their work. But the cameras must also be getting used to capture the outsiders. Turns out the followers of Patrick Kennedy are quite the fans of Francis Ford Coppola, as they've launched a masked rebellion called the Outsiders. For a while, I was ready to believe it could be just something orchestrated by Robert and Camille, but it turns out they're actively looking for them when they later attack the IT section of the building. So there's a chance these are the people who could help Juliet get the answers she's been looking for. Anyway, we get a much more solid answer to what happened to Bernard. Earlier in the episode, Robert has an interesting chat with Juliet that could have fooled any of us into wondering whether he might be on her side. But nope, that's clearly not the case. Robert tells her that she was in the airlock with Bernard, but because her suit was different from Bernard's, it didn't affect her. Instead, the poison in the atmosphere seeped into his suit. Bernard died in the process, and his body was then taken to the incinerator and burnt to ash. Later, when Robert briefs us on his interaction with Juliet, we get a quick glimpse of what actually happened. Bernard had actually survived the burn wounds, and it was Robert who choked him to death, thus closing one avenue for Juliet to get her answers, and also getting a hold of the larger authority in the silo along with his wife. Meanwhile, Paul Billings, the very man who was busy seeking answers in previous seasons, has somehow been silenced. He's more focused on ironing out the kinks in the pact. At the same time, Patrick Kennedy and Lucas Kyle have been declared fugitives, with the presumption that Lucas might be dead while Patrick is still at large. What's next? The IT room focuses on the fact that one of the outsiders had been injured on the hand, and they're actively seeking out someone with a bandage. So that's definitely going to be an important detail in the upcoming episodes. It might just be a dot that will connect later and completely drop in out of nowhere. But that's a very small detail compared to the absolutely bizarre nanoparticle gooey thing that appeared in the aircraft that crashed on their way to Iran. Could this be the very reason the silos were made? A brand new agent that can damage the enemy without being actively triggered or very transparent? I mean, it does make sense for something like this to push people into silos underground. But is it possible that the United States didn't manage to prepare for this type of threat? I wonder if Charlotte was already aware of a weapon like this, and that's why she needed her brother's help to get it out to the press that something beyond them was at play. Even though Charlotte's amnesia will surely mess up Daniel and the others' chances of finding out about this weapon sooner, what if they already know? What if they have as much hand in this as their enemy does? There's a lot to unpack with the episode, now that the series has decided to take on a whole new tone, something that wasn't present in the previous seasons. But that's how it's gonna be this season, and to be honest, it's really interesting to see a before times arc play out along with the conspiracy getting deeper in the present time with Juliet. The algorithm will definitely be the biggest reveal of the season.